We're about ready, Mark, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. So firstly, good morning to everybody and welcome. So this is, as I hope you're all aware, this is the Supply Chain Schools Innovation Showcase for Reducing Life Cycle Project Waste. Welcome to everybody. It's been a well-received event. We've got circa 60 odd people participating this morning, so thank you all for coming. Just by way of introductions, I'm Matt Nichols. So I'm the chair of the Waste and Resource Group for the Sustainability School, and my other hat is a divisional director for Reconomy. We've also got on the call the sector lead for the Sustainability School, which is Mark Turner, who you'll hear from shortly. So there he is, waving in the background. Just in terms of an explanation of what we're going to do then for the next couple of hours, here's the agenda. So welcome introductions, that's this bit now, in case you didn't recognize it. And I'll take you through the agenda now so you've got a flavour of the structure. Mark is then going to talk us through a little bit of the challenges that we're facing related to life cycle waste and what we can do about it, and a little bit of information on what we do as a group and where we've been focusing. We've got a panel of esteemed experts from the sector. So we're going to hear from Jade Hunt from Balfour Beatty, Roger Wright from Biffa, and Nick Ribbons from Zero Waste Scotland. So you'll hear from them shortly, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of the panel, just briefly. We're then going to hear from three speakers. We got an excellent lineup of speakers about the art of the possible and where they are as individuals and businesses. So specifically, we've got Paul Lewis from the Pallet Group, we've got Grace Wilson from HE Sim, and we've got Ross Dyke from Target, who is the flooring manufacturers, as you're probably aware. We then get an opportunity again for Q&As with the panel, and then we'll do some closing comments, and then we'll let you get back to your day jobs. So that's the plan in terms of the agenda. A couple of points to make in terms of protocols, if you like. Today is a mics off event, which you'll see from the way it's been set up. We do, however, need your questions, and like all of these things, these events work best if we get participation from the audience. So the good news is, if you're a bit concerned about asking your question live, if you like, you get the opportunity to put your questions in the Q&A section on Zoom. So if you go to the bottom of your page, you'll see up will pop the various little categories. Q&A is on there. Click on that, and that's your opportunity to put your question or your comment or your feedback or whatever it may happen to be. Mark's going to do a number of polls, which we'll do within Zoom. So again, can we ask you please take part in the polls? Really useful for the school to understand where you are, what your thoughts are, and give us a flavour of what's happening within the membership and the partners. So if we go on, Mark. So just in terms of the Waste and Resource Group, for those of you, some of you will be involved in the group, I know, but for those of you who aren't, there's a huge amount of resource within the school related to waste and resource. So we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years in terms of refreshing the landing page and updating and improving the various resources that are available. Whether that relates to legislation, whether that relates to duty of care obligations, whether that relates to processes, etc. All of that information is held within the website, as you know, free at the point of use. I'll talk a little bit in a minute about some of the areas where we focus, but there's an excellent piece of work that we did on material exchange platforms. So this is a directory essentially that shows you if you've got material on a project that's excess for whatever reason, then these are the facilities dotted around the UK, where they are, what materials they take, and how that works. So that's a really useful piece. We also do a lot of surveys, and it's interesting, I think, always to be able to compare your business to where other businesses within the sector are, whether you're on a par with the rest of the sector, or whether you're ahead, or whether you're a little bit behind, and to get their views. So we do a lot of work on surveys, and there's some very useful information I think we can glean from that. We also know from feedback that we've had that members and partners really like case studies. Everybody likes case studies because it gets you into the nitty-gritty, the practicalities of how to do things. So there's a huge amount of resource in terms of case studies on that waste and resource section of the website. Yeah. On we go, Mark. So I think this is an interesting slide, and this slide just really illustrates the touch points from if we're really as a sector going to impact on reducing waste, genuinely reducing waste. It's not just about handling waste efficiently, it's genuinely about reducing waste. And the best way to reduce waste is to actually design it out in the first instance. And what you see here, this slide is attempting to illustrate the various touch points that we need to get to. What's apparent is that on today's call, you get a lot of contractors, main contractors, you get a lot of subcontractors, we get a lot of suppliers. But what we're conscious of is to really have the effect that we're looking for, we need to get over to the left-hand side of that slide within the design architects and also with the clients. So that's something that we're working on. But if you've got people that you in those sectors that you can influence and get them to join in with a group, that would be really beneficial. Right? On the far right hand side of that slide as well, you see the FM piece. So if we're talking about waste over the life cycle of a project, then obviously FM has a huge bearing on that as well. Okay, Mark. So I'm not going to go through all of this, in the interest of time, but here's a list of the different elements, if you like, that we've been involved in and we are involved in as a waste and resource group. Specifically, I'm going to pick out a couple of these. Construction project lifecycle waste. Mark's going to show you some work, an excellent piece of work that's been done over the course of the last 6 months or so, with input from a number of people who are actually involved in the call today. So a really valuable piece of resource that I won't steal too much of Mark's thunder, explains the various different elements within the life cycle of waste on a project, and some data and some information, what to do about it, how to avoid it, best practice, etc., etc. Scrolling down a little bit, materials exchange platforms I touched on the previous slide, but again, if you're looking for where you can take materials to and donate those to, there's a really valuable piece of information on there. Again, I'm not going to go through all the other pieces, but you get a good flavor of what we do as a group if you look through that almost and assume it's an agenda for us as a group. And again, if you aren't involved currently and you look through that list and think that would be really useful, you've got some good input for that, then please do get involved in the group. Contact either Mark, myself, Naomi via the school. Okay. Okay, Mark.
Yep.
Right. So just from Mark's point of view, then maybe just a bit of a brief update on what the scale of the challenges and the sorts of things that we're trying to tackle with the Innovation Showcase today.
Okay, I'll make a start. Thanks for that, Matt. That sets the scene really nicely for everybody. As Matt says, get involved in this couple of hours. It's a chance to get your own views across, and you've got a great panel here who are going to, you can pick their brains. You can put your own points up, and if you've got examples of your own, please make sure you give us a link, because we need to chase this. But there's a big challenge to be dealt with, and that's what we want to kind of work on now. So before we kind of get into the piece of work that we've actually done, I've just got 4 poll questions that I'd like to ask you. And Rosie, I believe you're going to share the poll questions. Oh, right, that's not the answer. That's not the questions of the poll. So I will give you the questions of the poll. The questions of the poll is: how much construction, demolition, and excavation waste did we generate across the UK last time it was measured? So answer that question: how much construction, demolition, and excavation waste did we generate last time it was measured? Okay. So let's see what. Yeah, that's good. So, I mean, the answer, the majority have got to the right answer, and it's a phenomenal amount, isn't it? 138 million tons, even if it does include that demolition and excavation waste. So, quite fantastic amount of waste. So, let's bring up the second question. Okay, right. What percentage of our construction demolition waste, non-hazardous, is recovered in some way? And I'm sure the panel have plenty to say about the use of and the context of the word recovered. So which is the right number here, the last time it was measured? Okay. Right, so a fairly pessimistic audience we've got here with like 56%. The actual answer is 92.3%. Now, the last figures I could find via DEFRA were 2018, so the figure was at 92.3%. But when I look back across the figures, in the first number that was there, 91.4%, which is only a bit less than 92.3%, that was the figure in 2011. So in that period of time, we haven't done much. We haven't come very far forward. Again, there may be a discussion about that as well. It's really important to understand this scale of the challenge. Okay, let's do the third poll question. Oh, yeah. So we've just had that one, haven't we?
Different set of answers, though, Mark.
Yes, that's true. So the question that we have here, sorry about this, has been a bit of a mix-up regarding the labelling for these. Does your organisation have a waste reduction target? Is the question here. So the answer is you do, you don't, or you're thinking about it. Does your organisation have a waste reduction target? Okay. So most do, few don't, and a good fifth of you are thinking about it at the moment. And that, I'm hoping that today might be useful in that context, so that, you know, when you're thinking about your waste reduction target, hopefully, you know, some things will come across today as to how you set that and what you look for and how you measure success. Right, final question. Probably the question isn't going to match the answer, but, you know, we're kind of it's a bit like Live Aid. We're used to this kind of thing going on, so we'll just stick with it. Right, the question here is, how would you describe your organization's understanding of the circular economy? How do you understand your organization's understanding of the phrase the circular economy? And you've got three choices. You're right on it, you're working on it, or what on earth is it? Okay. Yeah. And that feels quite fair, doesn't it? And probably a good demonstration. So we've got a good proportion of you who are really into this area. I'm going to hear some great examples today. Certainly, you know, from the presenters we've got this afternoon. But I think the most of us are working on it, aren't we? It's an area where we need to do a bit more. So we'll just close that one out. Thanks for that. And you can just close that out, Rosie. Yeah. What I'm going to show you now, and that's me, I'm the sector lead for facilities management, but also for waste and resource use within the schools. So I work with Matt and colleagues to service this area. We've done our questions. And what I'm going to do now is give you a very quick sort of visual demonstration of a big piece of work that we've done that looks at this whole area of reducing project life cycle waste. And I want to kind of preface this by saying that this is a job that will never be finished. This is a job that we'll be on with forever, as long as you're supporting us and as long as there's a need to do this, which will continue. We will always be updating this work because there'll always be something different and better add to it, and we need your help with that. So let's set a bit of context for this. One of our esteemed panel members, which is Jade Hunt from Balfour Beatty, made us aware of this excellent piece of work from the Construction Leadership Council and the Green Construction Board, which shows a route map for moving towards zero avoidable waste in construction. Now, this is a great kind of document in its own right and a great piece of work in its own right, because it has timescales moving through the 20s, the 30s and the 2040s. It sets all the context, and it sets the aims in a really structured way. So you can see at the top, it kind of goes right the way from the design and pre-construction stage, through materials choice, into the construction process itself, into in use and end of life of a building, which is critical, as we saw from those figures before, and then has separate sections that focus into the joint plan to reduce waste to landfill by 2040, and a whole section around measurement and management, because we've traditionally not been great at measuring waste and resource issues. So really important. Now, we'll share a link for this document to you later on, but because it's useful in its own right. But what we chose to do in the school is think about how we could mobilize the resources we've got within the school to actually apply to this excellent structure. And that's what we've done. So what we've done on the school, and again, I will share the link for this with you. This is a series of screenshots from what we've sort of termed a bit of a mega resource. We've pulled together what we think are the most practical resources possible that can help at each stage along the way, from pre-construction clients and design teams, through materials choice, into the construction process, the whole area around in use and end of life. And under each of these, there are subsets, and I'm going to show you some examples of those. And then we have sections 5, 6, and 7 that you can see there, which focus around eliminating landfill, something again on measurement and management, because we need to really improve that area. But we also included a further section which we broadly called wider sustainability objectives, and these are the kind of the big cross-cutting themes that we have to tackle. You cannot look at waste without considering the carbon context. That's going to become more and more in the forefront of our minds, and already is. We've also got the big, massive area of social value, which we have to focus into, because there are great opportunities to create social value through how we manage our resources and how we manage our waste. And we've got the circular economy as well to consider in that area as an example. So how do we actually make this concept of the circular economy become something real? So these pages are there free for everybody to see, and they're located under the school partners part of the school website, but anybody can get to them. And the way they work is this. So if we went to, let's say, the first of those 7 headings, pre-construction clients and design teams, you get a drop-down menu. That drop-down menu would contain 5 separate aims, and again, these aims link to the aims that I showed you from the previous document. So thinking about design for end of life, thinking about DFMA, design for manufacture and assembly, thinking about designing out waste right at the start of a project, thinking about encouraging refurbishment over demolition, definitely a move back into that area now, from flatten it and rebuild to actually what can we do with the existing infrastructure we have. And thinking about the critical area around procurement, procuring with zero waste in mind. So, procurement decisions can really have an influence on what goes on in future. So when you go into just one section of this, one of the 7 sections, you get 5 subsets. With each of these subsets, what we've done is we've linked what we feel are appropriate practical resources for people who need support here and now through the school. So you can see some examples there, and these are examples that you provide for us. These are examples that come from our school partners and our members, and anything else that's free to air, so anybody can get to these resources. Move on one more. So when we get into the construction stage, you can see there are 4 subsets on construction. So we've got reduced volume of soil to landfill, more use and recycling of new build waste, reducing waste from temporary works, and better waste services for SMEs. So these are examples, and I've given you the sort of, selected resources that we've put in, or some of the selected resources for reducing volume of soil to landfill. So this is taking you directly to the resources within the school. If you have a particular problem or a particular challenge you want to address, you should be able to arrow in on it using this guide that we've put together. Here are the wider sustainability objectives, and we've listed 4. The one I didn't mention before was smart construction. But these are big themes. The theme of social value is a big theme and getting bigger. The theme of smart construction, the same. The theme of circular economy. We are far from having a circular economy across the UK, and we're going to need one. And we must understand the whole life carbon aspect of the waste and resources that we use. So there is kind of a brief resume of what we've got there. It's listed there again. I'll put a link in afterwards, and have a look at that after this event, please, and make use of it. And most importantly, if you've got a great idea or something that you can add to this, something that you can include, just put a link in the Q&A or let us know, because we're always looking for case studies and ideas. You're going to hear some great ones this afternoon, but we want more. So that's where it is. I'll put that link up for you. I'll try and put it in the chat if I can work out how to do that so that everybody can see it. And that is it from me.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you very much for that. So one thing I negated to say right at the outset actually is that we will circulate these slides after the event. So you don't feel the need to be making notes as we go along unless you particularly need to. So some interesting responses to those poll questions, I thought, as we were going through. So I mentioned earlier, we've got our panel, which is Jade Hunt from Balfours. We've also got then Roger Wright from Biffa, and we've got Nick Ribbons from Zero Waste Scotland. So just maybe if we can ask each of those in turn, Jade first, maybe then Roger, and then Nick, your views on the subject generally, but also those responses to the poll questions, which I thought, and particularly if I can, maybe ask you this response, 92% of waste is recovered. What's your view in terms of people's understanding of recovered and what that means, etc.? Okay.
Excellent. I'll make a start then. Good morning, everyone. Jade Hunt from Balfour Beatty. Thank you very much. I wanted to say firstly for inviting me to this session today. I think it's so good to see so many people from the school involved in these sort of sessions. We need more of this, more collaboration, more knowledge sharing between us all. So just to give you a bit of a summary, I will address the points that Matt raised specifically there, but just to give you a bit of a snapshot of my view of waste in the industry and where we are now and what we still need to do. So I've been working now in construction for about 22 years. I have to say I've seen some huge change in the industry in the time that I've been here. One of the very first schemes that I remember getting involved in was the whole halving waste to landfill back in the day, back in about 2008 to 2012. The industry achieved that target. We did halve waste to landfill. I've also seen probably about a 2/3 reduction in the amount of construction waste generated per £100,000 revenue, etc. In that time, in all the time that I've been measuring and monitoring waste in the industry. But as Mark pointed out, we're still generating huge amounts of waste, and from that 100 and whatever it was million tons, Mark, I think it was 138, about 60 million of that is still the construction and demolition waste. So 60 million tons is still construction and demolition waste, and I would say at the moment that of that demolition waste, still most of that is being downcycled, although we are improving, we are moving further up that waste hierarchy. And that construction waste element, that is unused materials, it's single-use packaging, it's stuff of value that's still going into the bins. So we know where we're trying to get to. We've got the UK government resource and waste strategy was published back in 2018 with their target to eliminate avoidable waste of all kinds by 2050. And then, as Mark pointed out, that we've got that Green Construction Board, zero avoidable waste in construction, the route map and the guidance and the stuff that the school have put together in terms of the resources that support that structure, I think is absolutely fantastic. In Balfour Beatty, we have the Building New Futures strategy with 3 sort of key elements to that. And we have specifically pulled out the materials and resources as an absolutely key element in our strategy. Everybody's focusing on carbon, totally understandable, but we do need to look at that wider picture in sustainability that includes those other elements, because they all overlap and they all integrate, and we know that. So in Balfour Beatty, we've got a lead sustainability professional who is our materials and resources person. We have our own targets to generate zero waste by 2040 and a 40% reduction by 2030. What we're looking to do is make sure we choose the right materials, use less materials, and create value from the materials that we don't use anymore. But what I would say, I think we still need to improve on a little bit, and I will shut up in a minute, so forgive me for still talking, guys. So what I would say, it's interesting, I've moved between a number of the sort of main contractors in the industry over those 20 years, and the challenges are the same wherever we go, you know, so measuring and reporting consistently. Mark, you raised that as an issue. We still have work to do there. We still have work to do in terms of translating that to the public domain and explaining what we're doing and how we're doing it. So are we measuring total waste, construction waste, net waste, waste avoided? While we're constantly finding new ways of recycling, recovering materials, and that's great, and getting better value from our waste, we are still paying for materials to be extracted, manufactured, packaged, transported halfway across the world, brought to our sites, stacked up, cut, and then the unused bits chucked in the bin. Sent away for disposal. And this is, for me, an absolute travesty. It's an outrage. We are inefficient still in what we're doing. In many cases, I think some of the challenges, the attitudes to waste still aren't shifting. They are in our sustainability bubble, but when you get out there in the operational world, sometimes it can be harder to get those shifts in attitude. I do still come across there, well, if the client's paying for it, what's the issue kind of attitude? You know, it is still there. The issue is it's waste of resources. We know that it's inefficiency, it's finite materials, etc., etc. There's a lot being done at that front end, design for deconstruction, disassembly, modern methods of construction, etc. And there's a lot being done at that back end, that reprocessing, that pre-processing, the ability to do that. I think an interesting point for us to be focusing on would be that contractual and commercial mechanisms for changing behaviour on site. So what can we actually do differently? How can we challenge or stop allowing those wastage rates that we traditionally see? And how can we really get down into the nitty gritty of changing that behaviour on site? So for me, it's a bit of a call to arms, challenging the traditional practices, and then the people on this call, the trades, the experts, the suppliers, the subcontractors, you are the experts in your field. So how can we change behaviour? That really needs to come through you. So I was interested in the figures from the polls there. I think that 92% people are presuming that's a bit less, you know, again, that understanding of what recovery means. I mentioned that demolition material. Yes, we are recovering huge amounts of that, but we know that a considerable portion of that is still being downcycled. So that retaining value of material as high up the waste hierarchy as possible, I think, is the bit where we still need to be doing a bit of a shift of attitude. So, I haven't got all the answers by any means, but I think that the work the Supply Chain School has done to bring these resources together is just, it's such an easy way of navigating your way through so much stuff. You know, I've been in this industry, I say 20 years, we've been producing case studies, we've been improving over time, but we still have a long way to go. And the way that the Supply Chain School has structured this information now, I think makes it really easy to follow and understand your place in that whole picture. So that's it from me. I will be quiet now, unless there are specific questions that come up. But thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Jade. I think what we'll do is we'll take Q&A at the end of the three panel speakers. So maybe Roger, if you want to go next.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Mark, for the opportunity. And good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well. So my name is Roger Wright. I'm the Waste Strategy and Packaging Manager here at Biffa, who I'm sure most of you will know is one of the largest waste management companies in the UK. And it's interesting that I've been put in the middle of the panel, which is I'm normally put at the end, because waste management is normally put at the end, but I'm glad to see that I'm not at the end this time, so that's good. And whilst you might think of Biffa as the company that just sort of picks up the bins, perhaps supports you with better segregation, improves recycling, hopefully, we'd like to think that our perspective in the last 2 to 3 years has changed in this sector, and obviously in terms of waste the journey more holistically. You know, this started before I joined, and I started in June 2020, and it started with the launch of our sustainability strategy just at the start of the first lockdown, which seemed like an awfully long time ago now, doesn't it? And this is kind of the first part of our approach. Instead of having a business strategy with a corporate social responsibility strategy tacked on the side, the business strategy was the ESG strategy, or was the corporate strategy, and there was no distinction between the two. And that's interesting because my previous experience at Marks and Spencer's, where I worked for nearly 9 years, their corporate strategy was their ESG strategy. We know it as Plan A, which still survives today, and it basically embedded sustainability into everything they did. And this actually proved, I could see that this is proving quite a successful way of growing the business, actually saving money, and doing all of that whilst trying to be good to the planet at the same time. So it was quite exciting for me to join another big British company in Biffa with the same ethic, at least perhaps a few years later than M&S. But it was really interesting, and in fact, I think, while I know that hiring me, a former packaging technologist, which is not something that waste management businesses normally do, was probably a small part of how this whole new approach was starting to manifest for us. So now I'm in the hot seat. I'm starting with a very small team, and I get asked the usual questions about bins, comms, and service. But as my title suggests, my main interest is about packaging. And of course, packaging is probably one of the biggest predominant number within that 138 million tons of waste. There's a lot of packaging in there. So if we can do something about packaging, we can do something about that number, of course. I reflected on the title of today's webinar was, how can we do project waste more sustainably? Well, I think if you do packaging waste more sustainably, it almost becomes a proxy for doing the projects as well. So there's a virtuous circle, hopefully, there. If you can do packaging well, you can do the projects well. But just by quick examples of what we do, and to put that into context, there's probably 3 areas that we look at, and hopefully we can talk about it more in the Q&A afterwards. So we think about behaviours, actions, and outputs. 3 quick examples from behaviours. So we're trying to get businesses to really understand what a circular economy actually means for packaging, and we can go into that in a bit more detail, because it can be a bit ambiguous sometimes. So we try and help businesses sort of understand that and what physically you can do. Second thing is, we know segregation is a challenge on a building site, and a busy building site. If you hear any background noise, apologies. I've appropriately enough got building work happening in my garden as we speak. And this is for us, it's trying to foster a way to make champions of the people in those businesses who care enough about the waste to then become advocates for everybody else, because we can't be on site at every building site every day of the week. So we have to try and create advocates for dealing with the waste properly. And then there are some sort of practical ideas as well. So we look at the way that materials, for example, could be introduced or not introduced, if you like, or removed by using a traffic light system, perhaps for different materials. My background in retail, this has been used very successfully at Tesco, where they put certain materials on the red list and try to gently move people into the green list. We also try and gamify recycling. We've just launched an app which is a game for people to play to try and put them into good behaviours, but there's so much more we can do in that area. Then I suppose the actions piece, there's probably a few examples of very practical things that, as a packaging technologist, I try and help businesses think about. It could be as basic as the print and the adhesives and the labelling on packaging, trying to make that as easy as possible to remove, or not have it in the first place, so that what we end up with is a higher value and is more circular. I understand that in this sector, there's a lot of things are over ordered. Well, so there's a lot of over packaging going on as well. So no one's perfect, but there's work we can do to try and remove that. I suppose we try from a packaging point of view, we want things to be as homogenized as possible. It's worked really well in retail, in food retail. We've got one type of material to package a thing, so that one type of material isn't too complicated to recycle. And a business we're working with, a great example of this is Monetti and their Polyloop process, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, where they take LDPE, shrink film, and wrap, and potentially recycle that back into the same thing again. So it's upcycled into the same product rather than downcycled into a single-use product like a bin bag or a carrier bag, which is then obviously thrown away after one use. So homogenization is really important. And then there's other things I think about is the related worlds of packaging. So what works in traditional food packaging, for example, a bottle, what could work in this sector, for example, could be a clamshell. Clamshells are used a lot to package things, and obviously they are at the moment, they are often bonded to other types of materials, and that's kind of the final point really. We're trying to help big businesses remove multi-laminates, one material bonded to another, and obviously there's a lot of activity in retail around removing polystyrene and PVC. And it's quite scary if you're in retail. The costs are going up for compliance, and extended producer responsibility is coming in, as we know. And this sector won't escape EPR, unfortunately. So we have to be aware of those new costs that are coming down the road. And then finally, outputs. I suppose this is the hopeful piece, is that we think there's opportunities to engage and invest in new innovative approaches to waste management, things that perhaps other people are recycling that we can't. We welcome those collaborations with other businesses. In CD&E, potentially is a great end market for some of the other recyclers from other sectors, whereas in the food world, those materials can't often go back into food contact packaging, but they could go back into CD&E packaging very easily. And I think it's trying to create those open loops between different sectors is really important. And then finally, and Jade mentioned this already, but we talk a lot about the waste hierarchy, and that's appropriate. But we're trying to become more carbon literate, and therefore trying to think about the carbon hierarchies as well as the waste hierarchy. And often the two don't necessarily align. And this very much integrates with this cradle to cradle or circular economy approach to how things should be done. And I think my final thought is that this therefore means that hopefully we can reduce both cost and carbon for packaging, and hopefully have a supply loop instead of a supply chain. And the very final point is reflecting on Matt's question about the recovered material, 92.3%. I really wanted to know how much of that was recycled and widely recycled, because I suspect that's a lot lower. In the retail space, it's around 46-47%, and it's plateaued for the last 4 or 5 years. And there's obviously a lot of focus on the plastic packaging that isn't recycled at the moment. But when I look at the data and I look at the numbers within CD&E, I think there is a massive opportunity here for us to get more of that material to be recycled rather than just recovered. So I do believe that number of 92%, but I think if we were asking a different question, then I think that's the right approach from here. And hopefully within the school, we can start to have those sort of conversations. And that's what I'm going to say, Mark. And hopefully I've covered enough topics to inspire a few questions.
Good stuff. Excellent. Thanks very much, Roger. Some really pertinent points, I think, within there. And lastly then, but by no means least, Nick, please, from Zero Waste Scotland.
So I just don't want to start chatting there with mute on. Yeah, it's a really, it's really interesting, and I think it's a sort of healthy sign of where the industry's at, that we're having these conversations about life cycle waste now, and we understand, it's just an absolutely perfect time to be beginning to implement these. It does start with design, and I think that reducing this there's things we can do on site. So there's things in terms of improving storage, improving handling, but there's also things I think that play before that, such as the standardization of components, as sort of Roger just mentioned there, is a huge thing. And I think that goes far beyond packaging in terms of the palette of materials is just so vast, and there's not recycling solutions, and there's not end of life solutions, I should say, for a lot of the material we use. And I think also the transparency of supply chain as well. What we kind of remember here is, what we need to remember is that to solve this problem, we really need to change or introduce a market. There's pieces of infrastructure missing in terms of reprocessing. So when we come to designing, or we come to the start of a project, I never see written into contracts or procurement reuse targets, or be they sort of qualitative or quantitative, or open or closed. And what we quite often have is, subsequently, after these contracts have been in place, people coming to us and sort of asking for advice around how we can make our project more circular. And in a lot of respects, the window of opportunity as you cycle through a project it begins to narrow and the gains become more diminished. I'm sorry, a cat behind me. So it's something that we need to focus on every aspect together, from the design to on-site management to end-of-life management. What I would like to see are teams of designers who have an understanding of what kind of reused material is available at the start of a project to influence how that project looks. And of course, a strong focus of ours right now is about embodied carbon or whole life carbon. This is going to be, in the next sort of 3 or 4 years, this is going to become a huge issue. And I think that that sort of is intricately related to the types of materials we use, where they come from, the provenance of those materials, and in turn the waste that's generated through a project. So we're working with policymakers to try and create robust evidence and an understanding of how this can be regulated, but also introducing it here in Scotland by way of things like the net zero in public sector building standard. So we there's a number of sort of pressure points that we need to push forward, but we can't forget that on site, a huge volume of waste is generated. I think Roger addressed that really well. A huge amount of it is packaging, and we can do so much. We can talk to suppliers about lightweighting or minimizing or changing the materials they use, reusing things. But I wonder if there is room there for within the contracts of developers about potential cost reduction in or financial incentives to prevent and reuse waste. So it's a really exciting area to be involved in. I'm really sort of honoured to be asked to talk about. So hopefully we I think one thing is that Jade and Roger there both talked about this vast recycling rate. So on the face of it, the construction industry looks like it's doing well, but a lot of these things, in a sense, it comes down to terminology, recycling, backfilling of quarries, landfill capping, energy from waste, combustion. All of these things are deemed to be recycling. Are we doing good enough? And the answer is definitely no. But I think on the plus side, the scope of opportunity here is absolutely massive. But it involves us all working together and really engaging the supply chain, which is key. So that's my thoughts in a nutshell.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Nick. Very, very helpful. I think what we'll look to do now is just to 5 minutes, maybe. There's 5 questions in the Q&A, so we can revert back to those. Just from my point of view, just some excellent comments I thought there from all 3 panelists. One of the points that Jay made, which was for me echoed within what both Roger touched on and Nick, was that all the time that you've got, if you like, a focus on how do we reduce waste within, as Jade termed it, the sustainability bubble, and you've got maybe a different perspective on that from a practical point of view on site, where the reaction can be much more commercial, as in, well, if the client's paying for it, what's the problem? Well, the point is that it's not necessarily a commercial problem. Personally, my view on that is, if you can link the two, so that you are able to demonstrate and monetize the implications of not recycling, and the distinction between recovery and recycling, which Roger made very clearly, I think that will have a significant impact. So like most things in life, if you can get the bean counters bought into something that's the right thing to do anyway, then actually the combined effect of commercials and the right thing to do is very powerful. Jade alluded to the fact that the initial drive to increase, to double landfill reduction rates was achieved. Well, why was that achieved? For me, that was because landfill tax ratcheted up year upon year upon year upon year. So it drove people to do the right thing. And once people got into the mindset of, I want to do the right thing, then you're on a winner. Yeah. So I quite like Roger highlighted the point. I think he said it was within Marks and Spencer's, the traffic light system. Yeah?
It was actually Tesco. But other retailers have followed suit. Yeah. Yeah.
And interestingly, it is about getting hearts and minds, isn't it? One of the things that that strikes you about Marks and Spencer's, for example, most people know that little mantra, plan A, because there is no plan B, that people really locked into that. So I think there's something in there that says if you can keep it simple, and that traffic light system that said, these red items, they're expensive, yeah? And you at the least want to be moving to amber, and ideally you want to move to green. If you can get that and you can monetize it somehow, and that's something maybe we can spend a bit of time on within the school and see how we can influence things to make that happen, right? So some excellent points there. Maybe if we just go to the Q&As, can we do that, Mark? I can.
Do you need me to read them out?
I've got them here. So Lucy Walker, I'm not sure where Lucy's from. She just made I think it was more a point rather than a question, that she's speaking at a social value summit to promote the partnership between themselves, whoever she works for, it's a charity, and MWR, which is a metal recycling business. So I don't necessarily think that was a question, that was more of a statement. Are there resources about material sharing platforms other than the MAF map? I find this platform is not fully utilized. We would agree with you. I don't think that platform that was developed is fully utilized. I'm intrigued as to why that is actually. But anyway, so there's a lot of excitement when we put it in place. The feedback we've had in terms of the content is that it's well received. So I'm not sure why it's not fully utilized. I don't know that there are other directories. One of the reasons we put that directory together was the alternative to that is to go geographically into wherever you're working and start looking for a location close to you. So I'm not aware that there's an alternative to another directory, but I think the directory that's on the site is a good one and worth utilizing. Question there for Biffa from Becky Finlayson. Maybe Roger, do you want to respond to that? Can you see it?
I think the comment was around can Biffa support incineration or energy from waste for high calorific materials? And I think Becky's referred to post-industrial recycled waste, which is typically the sort of stuff that never goes to a domestic end user. But in my experience, that kind of waste is good quality material for mechanical recycling. It shouldn't ever go to incineration, but the challenge will be trying to segregate that material from all the other materials on a site, in a business or otherwise, and that's the real challenge for us. We do send material to energy from waste, but we don't want to send plastics, for example. And I think there's too much plastic in general waste at the moment, and that's like I say earlier, it's an easy target to try and pull that out and do something better with it. And mechanical recycling is the best thing to do. If you can't have reduced it in the first place, then let's mechanically recycle it. So I wouldn't want to put that material in EFW anyway, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Roger. Again, anonymous. How do we get targets on reuse and recycling up the priority list? For me, that my comment earlier about monetizing the impact of not doing that, I think will have a big part in that. I don't know if any of the other panelists have got a view on that or a comment.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, I think, with reuse and recycling targets. It very much depends on the commercial setup of your construction project and how you're doing things. The reuse and recycling targets for the waste supply side, absolutely. For me, it would be about avoiding waste targets in the first place for other trades.
Okay, interesting.
I was wondering, sorry, also Jade, on that. Do you might know, or the other panel members might know. Do you think people know how to do that? They'll practically know how to do this. Need to know how to write targets into contracts. The only reason I ask, I've been reading a report, an Interreg report, which was about the setting of reuse targets in contracts, how to create them first of all, and then how to actually embed them within contracts. And I wonder if there is actually, you know, if this is being done, is it just being done by people who don't have any formal sort of training in that, or maybe there's a education or information piece to be done around that within the industry.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
a question of the question.
I do remember, as I say, having been involved, fortunately, in waste for some time now. Back when we were looking at in the days where we were setting up the halving waste to landfill, etc., there was a set of guidance that was produced on procurement. So how to set targets in your subcontracts, in your contractual terms. I believe all the guidance that was produced at that time is still available, but again, that may be another one for the school, just to see if we can get hold of that and add that to our resources if it's not still available. It might need a bit of a review. It's probably a little bit dated now, but there was a big focus on procurement advice at that time.
Yeah, I think there may be. We have a little bit on the Zero Waste Scotland website as well, but I think maybe it's like time to revisit that. And,
I agree. Yeah.
And maybe assess if there's a skills gap.
Okay, so thanks to the panelists for their responses, and hopefully those questions that we've responded to, it's picked up the points that you were making or querying. What I'm going to suggest now, this was intended just to be a brief Q&A session, and there's a longer Q&A session towards the end of the meeting. So what I'm going to suggest now is maybe we'll move on to the presentations to make sure that the presenters get their opportunity. And then we'll come back, any Q&As that we've not responded to, we can come back in the later Q&A session and mop up at the end. So Mark, can we go back?
We can, hang on. Sorry, give me a moment. Well, really, all I'm doing is sharing the agenda to introduce, first of all, Paul from the Pallet Loop. So I suggest, rather than me put some slides up to take them down again, we just stick Paul on.
Let's do that.
Okay, lovely. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to share the Pallet Loop to everyone today. I will start off, hopefully, with a video introduction that we will try. So. Okay. So a little intro there into what the pallet loop is looking to achieve. I think we're probably all familiar with that little wooden thing that arrives on site. Most people are interested in the product that's on top of that wooden thing, and then we end up leaving the pallet to not a lot really. So I think some of the figures on there: 18 million pallets a year going into UK construction. That requires 6,000 acres of forestry to be felled every year. That tree that took 40 years to grow then has the joy of being a pallet for a few weeks before being discarded around the corner. And I think a lot of the stuff that Jade and the panel have been talking about today really resonates with this business model around designing out waste. So very much so, if we think of, if you walk into a Tesco's, Sainsbury's, and look down, again, not many people look down below the product, but there'll be blue pallets everywhere, a sea of blue pallets. That's a system called CHEP. In the UK, they move 150 million pallets of product a year. It's a pooling solution, so everyone has responsibility to maintain ownership of the pallet. They achieve a 98% reuse rate on 150 million movements a year. Construction, we believe, achieve about a 6% reuse rate on their pallet pool. So that we go back to the fact that that CHEP pallet I refer to, the blue pallet, is one specification. That's it, one spec. If you want to supply into Tesco, you have to package your product onto that pallet. The UK construction industry, I think I lost count at about 2,500 pallets that are being used to supply in. So whether if you're a bagged cement producer, there are 7 or 8 key bagged cement producers in the UK. They're probably using about 30 to 40 different specs just across their businesses, all doing the same thing effectively. You know, it's a 20-ish kg bag of powder, but there's a huge lack of collaboration between these businesses, and as a result of that, we end up with what is ultimately quite a dysfunctional packaging system. It's dysfunctional at the front end because there's no design that's been thought about there, and therefore it's just a bit of a mess at the back end, which then leads to about 275,000 tons of wood waste entering effectively our waste stream. But this is all about circular economy. So this is it's all about driving this reuse, and the pallet loop is about maintaining a value on that asset as that product moves through the system. So not unlike having just come back from a festival called Latitude in Suffolk with two teenage children from the weekend. So apologies if I'm looking a bit tired, but there were kids running around that site with stacks of plastic cup or paper cups actually. Why? Because they were worth 10 pence, and there wasn't a single paper cup in sight at the end of the weekend because they'd all been mopped up, and therefore that there is that, and it's maybe a bit sad, but we will be driven by monetary incentive in life. We will take our reusable bags now to a supermarket because we're fed up of paying 10 pence for a bag when it's completely unnecessary. So the pallet loop looks to maintain a value, a £20 value, throughout that supply chain, the value chain now. And at the end of it, we will be returning that value to the person that gives the pallet back. It really isn't that complicated. Now, I've been working on this for about 4 years. We are working with some key manufacturers. I'll share a bit more of, if I can, my screen here, which helps to show some of the work that we're doing with some of the key the key construction companies across the supply chain. But this is very much about collaboration, because we can't, it's very difficult for a manufacturer to make the decision to move to a standardized pallet system where there is a value that they are going to have to pass down the chain to their customer, unless their customer is happy with that. Well, they can enforce it, but that's a difficult thing to do when we're in a competitive environment. So you can see here we're working with, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's the key principal contractors, merchants in the middle. You know, this is all about collaborating in order to achieve a better place. The key things with Pallet Loop, ultimately, as I talked about standardization, I've talked about, I think, maintaining some value so that people are driven to do the right thing. But also what has really been missing previously is a logistics system that's dedicated to recovering pallets. So I think many manufacturers in the past have tried to operate their own deposit systems or collection systems. But you know, if you are a bagged cement producer, that's what you're specialist at. You're not specialist at recovering one of your 600,000 pallets from all areas of what is not really a circular supply chain in like retail is. So the loop back becomes a key part of what the Pallet Loop will be offering. And in fact, I believe that loop back pallets will just be a start of the journey. And you know, we've got Biffa, Economy on the call. I think through collaborating with these other waste companies, you know, with dedicated collection systems, we can end up in a world where we do have this true circularity, and get these pallets, you know, back into, you know, why not achieve? You know, why is 98% an unachievable target within our construction world? So my invitation to everyone on the call is to, if this is something that you believe can work in your business, you're interested in, then please just reach out. And because the more voices, the more critical mass that we achieve will be the closest we get to launch. And we are looking to launch now in Q1 23 with a number of key manufacturers. But you know, it is, you know, we do require critical mass for this service in order to invest in the infrastructure required for this national recovery system. So look, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move on now, Mark. But I guess if there's any questions at the end, happy to answer them. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay. So thanks, Paul. Some useful content there, and as you say, maybe we'll do questions at the end of the 3 sessions. So Rosie, do we have Grace on the call? We do.
Hello.
Hello,
Grace.
Can everyone hear me?
yes, I think.
Okay, fab. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for letting me join and present my case study. Apologies, I couldn't dial in properly. I had a few technical issues, but I believe Mark's going to be sharing my slides for me.
Right.
Yeah, fab. So I'll just give a brief introduction. I'm Grace Wilson. I'm a technical apprentice and I work for HESIM, and we are a subcontractor specialising in mechanical and electrical installation. I'm currently on-site based on the project you can see on your screen. It's New Victoria in Manchester, and it's a residential project consisting of 2 towers and around 520 apartments in total. The main contractor on site is Vinci Construction, and early on in the project, about 9 months ago, they approached us, HESIM, and asked us to present a waste management strategy on how we can reduce waste on site. And as I'm a student in the university and I've been studying sustainability quite a lot, it really interested me what we could do and what difference we could make. So with Action Sustainability with Mark and Imogen, we began our case study and we named it Prevention Before Production. So our whole aim is to stop products coming to site before we need to dispose of them to landfill to try and reduce as much as we can. So I'm just going to run through the report we've put together. So it's not completely finalised yet, but once it is, it will be sent out across the wider businesses. But for now, I'm just going to give a quick brief overview about the actions that we've taken and the results that we've produced from our case study. So that is just our little title page, and that's a picture of our team and everyone who was involved. So on site, absolutely everyone was involved in our case study, and it was really, really welcoming to see the enthusiasm everyone had in really reducing the waste and getting it down. Next slide, please. So the aims of our project, the main thing we wanted to do was to accurately measure the amount of waste that an M&E contractor was producing on a site. And we were quite lucky with New Victoria, as most floors are identical to the one below. So it really gave us an opportunity to accurately measure the waste. So the plan of action that we put in place was to, on level 1, we didn't make any changes to what we usually do. And we brought in an A-frame and we measured absolutely every single bit of waste that we produced and our subcontractors produced. And from there, we implemented all of our new ideas and techniques on how we can stop this waste coming to site. And then on level 5, once we got up there, we did the same again, and we measured absolutely everything. And then from there, I'll show you the results as we move along in our slides. Another one of the main things that we were aiming to do is, as mentioned before, is reduce the amount of packaging, especially with M&E. One of the main things I noticed is that as a contractor, say in this building, there must be at least 3,000 light switches that need to be installed. And every single one of these light switches was being delivered in its own personal, wrapped in a plastic bag with its own set of instructions inside a cardboard box, inside a bigger cardboard box. And in a commercial setting, you won't need that many, for instance, like leaflets on how to install it, because it's not a domestic product. Even though it's designed as a domestic product, it's being used in a commercial setting. So I think one of the next steps we want to take is, how can we tackle that? How can products be marketed in a commercial way? And the other main thing that we wanted to do, and I think the main thing that we achieved with this case study, is improving attitudes towards waste management. Because when we first started, there was a bit of resistance from our supply chain almost. As in, like, why are we doing this? What difference can we actually make? And things along them lines. But I think once we really got stuck into it and we explored what we were doing, the attitudes that were changed was phenomenal, and everyone just really wanted to get stuck in and get involved and see what difference we could make. If we just go to the next slide, please. So these are just some facts and figures that have been mentioned previously on why we do need to change. As we were saying, like 32% of all landfill waste comes from construction and demolition. And as HECIM, we've pledged zero avoidable waste by 2030. So waste reduction is a really big part of our company currently. And we're doing many, many things just to try and work towards that goal. Next slide, please. So the first thing we did when we were starting this case study was contact our supply chain. And if you can just see at the bottom there, they're all of our main key supply chain, all our partners. So this is Sarah, our group procurement director. So I drafted this letter and Sarah has sent it out to all of our supply chain just to get some responses. So we just go to the next slide, we can see some of the responses that we got. Majority was absolutely positive. Everyone was really willing and happy to get involved, and they came to the table with their own ideas, and it was just very, very positive. If we just skip along to the next other slide, please. The one after that. Thank you. So these are some of the ideas that we came up with. As I said, the contacting suppliers and manufacturers, getting everyone on the same page was essential for making this work. One of the main things that we did, what was the most successful, was the use of crocodile boxes. So as an M&E company, especially in residential, we use these what we call apartment packs. So an apartment, for each apartment, it has its own pack. So it has everything that our subcontractors will need inside this box. And it's usually a cardboard box. So it'll have all your switches, all your lights, everything that you need inside this one box. And we noticed that they were getting delivered to site and all of this excess cardboard waste was just going straight into the skip. And as these boxes were identical each time, we thought, why not invest in heavy duty crocodile boxes? So it's heavy duty plastic. And what happened was we had a set and our suppliers had a set. And so they'd fill the boxes with everything that we'd need for that level. They'd deliver it to site and we'd return the previous level's boxes to them. So it created like this, this system, this cycle of these boxes getting passed back and forth, and that alone managed to cut the cardboard down phenomenally. Another thing that we were suggesting and we've started implementing is the use of QR codes instead of leaflets all the time. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, like a leaflet is like, you just think, oh, it's a piece of paper, it can just be scrapped. But when you're working in such a big industry with so many apartments, especially residential, it's amazing how much it builds up. So something as simple as putting a QR code on the side of a box instead of a 10-page leaflet really can make a bit of a difference. And another thing as well was the accuracy. So measure twice, cut once. And it's a basic principle, but especially in construction, the more you get used to a job and the better engineered it is, the less waste that has happened. So I feel like the pre-construction element needs to be focused on a lot more and really getting it better engineered from the get-go so that these little mistakes and things like that are as minimal as they need to be. And then another small thing was we were stock checking all the time. So any kinds of defects or any kinds of duplicates, we were sending them back to our suppliers to either get mended or reused, just so, because usually if some operative would be on site and something's broken, they'll just lash it. But instead we're saying, no, bring it back to us and see what we can do with it. And it's all these tiny little changes, which I believe are really going to make a difference. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this was just what I've mentioned before, the steps that we've taken on this case study, just to fully measure our waste, implement our ideas, and then see where we go from there. Next slide, please. So these are just some pictures. That's me in the top right-hand corner of what we did. So on site, we got these giant Hessian sacks and we tied them up. And what we did, we split our waste out. So we split it out into 5 main categories. If we just go on to the next slide, please. So this is from level 1, the very first measurement we did. So we split it out into about 5 categories. We had cardboard, soft plastics, hard plastics, metal, cable, and then other miscellaneous items. And in total, that came to 403 kilograms worth of waste. And as I said before, all the levels are the same. So we tallied it up and that was around 18,000 kilograms of waste, which is not acceptable. And just some quick, like very rudimental maths, we calculated that to be about 270 meters cubed of landfill space and around £4,000 cost of skip hire. So if we just skip forward a couple and I'll show the results because I'm wary of the time.
Fine for time, Grace.
One, please.
Everybody's enjoying this.
Okay, so these are some pictures from level 5 when we were weighing them from level 5, and even from the get-go, the second we started collecting the waste, you could visually see a difference, especially in the cardboard. So if we just skip 2 slides.
Oh. And
the next one, please, just to show the results. Okay, so here are the results of our little case study that spiraled. In total, between levels, so from level 1 to level 5, we managed to reduce the waste by 188 kilograms. And estimating that up through the building, that's around 8,460 kilograms of waste for the whole project, and approximate nearly £2,000 in skip hire. And that's one of the things I've mentioned a lot is the cost savings, because things like this, there is no negative to it, because usually when someone's trying to push forward a new incentive or a new something else, there's usually a negative, like it's going to cost someone money, it's going to cost someone time, and it does cost us time, but there is no downside to waste management. It saves everyone money, it saves everyone time, and it's helping the environment and it's helping the planet. So I really can't see a downside into this. So as I said, we managed to save 8,000 kilograms of mechanical and electrical waste on this project alone, and Vinci really helped us with that. With the encouragement of them and through the Action Sustainability, it's skyrocketed this case study, and we're still going with it, and we're still encouraging on site what we can do. I think one of the main things we managed to do though was improve the attitudes and brought awareness to the waste reduction, especially through our supply chain. it's like I'm still getting ideas and people phoning me up all the time asking like, what else can we do and what more can we bring to the table? And we're now rolling this out through our other jobs on site. So we're taking what went well and what we could have done better last time, and we're now running that through all the other jobs that we currently have at HESIM. So we just run to the next slide. So these are the next steps to take. So recently I visited as well the Kenny's waste management facility, just to kind of bring this little case study full circle and see what happens at the end of the job. And it was really interesting to see like how much, as you were saying before, like the pallets, like how many pallets were actually there. And they were an energy for a waste for energy facility. So they had, I think it was 99.7% diverted from landfill in total. So the job itself is it's doing quite well in its waste management strategies. Excuse me. And I think one of the next steps is really just to get this case study out there and just get as far as we can and really show people like it's just these tiny little steps and what can we do. And I hit a slight glass ceiling during this project. As I said, I wanted to, as I mentioned before, like with the light switches, thinking about commercial packaging. And I spoke to a few manufacturers and I hit a bit of a ceiling in terms of how can we reduce waste without compromising quality. For instance, I think I spoke to the people who provide our OZO heaters and our MVHR units. They need to be delivered and installed to the best quality they can. And sometimes that packaging is like, it's essential so it doesn't get like dinged on the way and it doesn't get damaged, and we can provide the job that we've being expected to provide to a high quality. So I think the next step there is to how can we you can't get rid of the packaging. So how can we make it more sustainable? How can it be reused? Like what can we do? And I think everyone just needs we need to get our heads together and really think about what we can do with that. And also with the packaging as well, as I said before, the commercial style of packaging instead of individual. Like instead of just like it arrives as in you've just gone to Screwfix and picked it up off the shelf. Like how can we package that in a more sustainable way? So we just pop to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I think the successes was mostly our communication and execution of this project. As I said, it would never have worked if everyone wasn't involved. If it was just me and my team just shouting from the rooftops, I don't think we would have got much attention. But with the backing of Vinci and with Action Sustainability, it really managed to get on its feet and really made a difference. And I think the improvements is, as we started this case study around 4 to 5 months in the project, it was a bit hard. It was a little bit harder to try and get things off the ground. But I think as I said, it's called prevention before production for a reason. So I feel like all this waste reduction needs to start as part of the contract at the very beginning of a project before anything's been signed. And it's part of your contract that this is like lay out what you can do for us to help with these waste reduction strategies. But that's it. That's pretty much all from me. But it's been a fabulous project, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I'm made up that you've invited me in to speak about it. It's been really great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Rosie. I thought that was excellent, by the way, and from a very practical perspective as well. So picking up Jade's point earlier, this is from the viewpoint of the people operating the site, which I think is critical. Interesting to me as well. Two things came out of that loud and clear, and that is, one, it was about getting everybody's hearts and minds engaged in it, and two, interestingly, it was the principle of monetizing the impact of that helped in doing that. So I thought that was excellent. Rosie, Grace, are you able to stay with us to do the Q&As at the end of the session?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Okay. So again, thanks to Grace for doing that. And maybe if we move on then to Ross.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Two seconds.
That seems to be showing, Ross.
Yeah, does that come up now?
Yeah, you just need to put it into present mode.
There we go. You hear me okay, Mark, now?
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
fine. Fire away.
Cool. Okay, so it's probably good that I've gone last, to be honest, today. Following up from Grace there, I think sort of bringing things to action is key for us on what we've spoken about today. So I'm just going to showcase a little bit what we do at Tarkett. On the right-hand side, you can see a little bit about who we are, if you haven't heard of us before. We're a global manufacturing firm of flooring. We have 12,000 employees. We sell into 100 countries, selling approximately 1.3 million square meters per day. And there are the various product lines that we sell as well. But I'm not showing that to show our scale. I'm showing that to show that our scale relates to impact. So at Tarkett, we recognize that we have a huge impact on what we do. We have a huge impact onto the industry that we provide flooring for. And it's really key that we showcase our responsibility for the materials that we sell. So tackling climate change and circular economy is one pillar that we look at, that I'll be focusing on today, and certainly our recycling aspect, but we also consider other factors as well. Using good materials and being completely transparent about what are in our products, and looking at indoor air quality as well, and other aspects of sustainability and health and well-being. We've already mentioned social value today, and that is gathering huge momentum at the moment, so there's something we can't ignore. So just a little bit about our climate and circular economy approach at Tarkett. We've released a climate roadmap that for 2030 that's being monitored by SBTi. Some of you may have heard of them, Science-Based Targets Initiative. So they're a third-party verification business that are actually tracking our ambitions as well. So whilst we state our ambitions on climate change and on what we're doing, we're actually being third-party verified along the way too, to make sure that we are actually being verified on our journey. And we're actually looking at various ways of recycling within circular economy. Flooring is essentially, we get clean waste, but also old flooring as well has been the key challenge, I guess, in the flooring industry, and especially on the scale of commercial projects that we're helping support as well. So, you know, our vinyls that may be glued down for 20 years, our carpet tiles that are also tackified down for many years. We have to be able to provide the technology and investments, and we've been able to do that. As you can see on the right-hand side, 112,000 tons of flooring through our Restart program. Restart is the name of our recycling program, has been recycled. 15% in 2021 of raw materials was from recycled content. We're looking to improve that by another 15%, up to 30% by 2030. We're also looking at our own production as well, but sustainable production. It's not just the materials and the recycling processes, it's the renewable electricity in our factories as well. So a little bit more about our recycling, our Restart scheme. Yeah, you can see lots of industries saying that things are recyclable, but it's only functional when there's a system in place to be able to collect the actual product that we're talking about. In this case, our flooring, whether it be the insulation offcuts or whether it be the old flooring that I spoke about just now, post-use waste. We have to have a system in place to be able to collect it. And we have to be able to then have the technology to recycle it back into product. For us at Tarkett, we're able to take old flooring back. We're able to take carpet tiles back, strip the yarn out from the back end and make new carpet tiles from it. We're able to take glued down vinyl and take it back to our recycling plant in Sweden, wash off the adhesives and substrates, leave clean waste, and actually then make that into new flooring as well. And I'll come on to that a little bit more. This might look like a technical slide. However, I will talk through it. We've mentioned carbon a lot today, and we need to consider what our impact is. So this particular example is based on a life cycle and an EPD stages down the right-hand side. And this example relates to 1 meter squared of carpet, for instance. So you can see in the top right, the A1 to A3 stage of manufacturing, we're emitting around 10 kilos of CO2 during that A1 to A3 stage. Around 8 kilos of that relates to virgin raw material extraction. So we need to look to reduce that. And that's why we see recycling the circular economy as a key driver to be able to do that. So via our restart process, and in the bottom right, you can see the incineration. The incineration's adding around 4 kilos of CO2. So currently, just from the 1 meter squared, we're on 14 kilos of CO2. By taking old flooring back and being able to recycle it, we're eliminating or reducing our reliance upon extraction of raw materials. So reducing that to around 5, and we're not incinerating the product anymore either. We're actually taking that back to the raw material stage and being able to use recycled content in the manufacturing stage. So already we've reduced that from 14 down to 5, and that's a reduction of around 65%. And essentially, whilst it looks like a complex side, it is what we see as the key driver for us in the construction industry, especially with our impact and our footprint. That it is the key driver that we see as being able to improve on things. And it's not just flooring that we look to take back either. We're actually incorporating materials from other industries. So we're looking at we do take chalk from the drinking water industry to put into mineral fillers of our products. We take the PVP from old windscreen films and incorporate that. And we also take back discarded fishing nets to make into new yarn for our carpet tiles as well. And this helps, obviously. How does this help our clients? Well, there's been so much call for green building certifications currently. We're working on these almost on a daily basis with our customers and clients at the minute. BREEAM Lead Well being the most popular. And this initiative and the circular economy certainly helps to hit these targets. So a little bit more about Restart and how that looks at Target. I mean, you can see there the key dates, but one thing I wanted to focus on here was the sort of 2019 through to 2021. So in 2019, we were able to fully close loop recycling of carpet tiles, as I've mentioned, stripping out the yarn from the back end in our dedicated recycling centre in the Netherlands. And we can actually make new yarn from the old yarn and new backing from the old backing. In 2020, we were able to take back our post-use homogeneous vinyl, and this means that we can actually wash off the adhesives and substrates from the back. And then finally in 2021, we also incorporated linoleum into that post-use category as well. So old linoleum, even from other manufacturers, we're able to take that back and recycle it into new linoleum. And it's just this slide, I think it's not a case of saying, look how great our journey is, even though we're really proud of it. It's also a case of look how much the technology is advancing in recent years. And we're always constantly striving to achieve more, and we will at Target. We've proved that over the years, and most recently, you know, over the last 3 years, the advancements have been huge, and we hope to continue and improve upon what we already can support the industry with. We need to make it hassle-free for our customers. So we provide bags for the insulation offcuts and the flooring. We then bring those bags back. This is all free of charge. The bags go out free of charge to the project sites, the flooring contractors, normally done via the developers or the main contractors. That's where the agreement starts. The flooring contractors are the ones doing the work. The bags are free. That's all we ask, is that they're filled with the material, and then the collection is free as well. We need to make it hassle-free. So a little bit about this post-use vinyl recycling that I've mentioned. We've actually got a dedicated recycling plant in Sweden. This is where we hold what we call a washing machine. And as I mentioned, we're able to wash off the glues or concretes or wherever's on the back end to leave clean product to be able to then make new flooring. And I've already touched upon the actual process. You know, sending out the bags, making sure that the project teams are all on board with the recycling process and the restart scheme and our collection process. And we also provide, now that this is gathering some pace as well, we actually give out restart certificates post-project to be able to let our clients and all the stakeholders know what their CO2 savings are, how much material we collected, where it went. And this is actually really sort of taken quite well by our customers. I've already talked about our carpet recycling process. Again, we have a dedicated recycling centre. We have 9 in total across Europe, and our carpet tile one is based in the Netherlands, and that's where we strip out the yarn from the back end. We've actually pioneered and invested in a new eco-based backing, which is the one I'm talking about, that's fully recyclable, along with the yarn, and that's really sort of gathered pace and helped us regain carpet tiles from the market. Yes, of course, we have challenges on legacy products, but what we're producing now is responsible. What we're producing now, we can take back and make into new carpet tiles post-use. And some examples of how, when and where we've done it with our customers. This particular example is focused on IKEA in Sweden. I do have a couple of UK examples as well, but this particular one is where we would capture 10,000 square meters of old vinyl flooring from an IKEA store. We took it back to our recycling centre. We washed it, we made new flooring from it, and we re-delivered it a third point down there to another store. I'm not sure how good everyone's Swedish is. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce that name, but it went to a new store and it was installed, and we estimate that it was close to saving around 100 tons of CO2 emissions just on that one particular process. And what are our other recent successes with this investment and opportunities? We're currently taking back from a refurbishment job 1,500 square meters from the University College London Hospital. Again, the main contractors helped us with this. Again, the flooring contractors agreed to do it, which is, you know, the biggest, I won't say battle, but challenge at times. So that's ongoing. We have a case study ready for that we'll share with the school and all its members once it's finalised. Similarly, there's a case study being done for a school up in Shipley, that's north of Bradford. We took up 900 square meters of another manufacturer's linoleum. Again, we will take that back to our recycling centre and recycle it. And both of these occasions, we've actually given new product from our process to be installed as well. And I just thought it would be important. I know some of the members from these companies are on the call, but there are many successes on our recycling process. But Lang O'Rourke, who we've worked with down in Brighton, I'm actually going down to Brighton later today to see how that project is progressing. Overbury on EBRD, ISG on Skylabs, mainly carpet tiles taken back from Skylabs, a great project there, and all the stakeholders within that project were fully on board with everything that we needed to do. And Wilmot Dixon at the M3 Academy. And on the right hand side there is just an example of our restart certificate that I mentioned. So the contractor, whoever the stakeholders were, the amount of the kilos of product that we took back, the project name, and what that equates to in CO2 emissions saved. And I think sort of rounding up, but basically on what challenges and opportunities everyone else has mentioned and spoken about today, it's about exploring new opportunities and making the circular economy real. Communication between all the stakeholders, certainly. We've mentioned collaboration a few times to make these things real, and Grace hinted to it a lot during her presentation. Everyone needs to be able to be supportive of these new ideas and these new ways of working. It doesn't mean that it's a chore. It doesn't mean to me it's more expensive. It actually probably works out cheaper, but it's that culture and mindset change that we're all working on to make sure all these things become reality. In terms of the recycling process, the site management, we need to be able to support at site level. Very often we or I get agreement with sustainability managers or management teams, but once it gets down to site level, it's as if the message or the incorporation of these project and recycling processes get lost. So we need to make sure that the site management allows for space to be able to communicate that this is actually a real thing that we want to work with within the supply chain, and be able to support and make sure that these things become reality. And again, the next point is similar, allowing circular economy to have a place on projects. And that includes administration and logistics to make sure that the communication and everything that we are trying to achieve, it does actually become reality and doesn't become a 20-page PowerPoint presentation. So yeah, these are some key contacts at Target. Yeah, and thanks for the school for allowing us to showcase some of our initiatives within circular economy, and feel free to get in touch.
Great stuff. So thanks very much, Ross. Really helpful, and some interesting recurring themes in your presentation from the previous two as well. Mark, just in terms of the next step then, I think, is the Q&A, general Q&A.
Yeah, we seem to be getting
We're getting the feedback coming up early there. I don't know why, but anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to move to general Q&A, and we've got some already listed up. So I think it'd be good if we gave a response from our panel to the 3 presentations we've had in the context of that Q&A, if anybody's had a chance to look at them, because some of the things may actually be on the same theme. So if you thumb through those panel while you're giving your responses, that would help us no end. By some miracle, we've managed to actually come out pretty much bang on time. So we've got about 20 minutes to do this, which is very pleasing.
Very reassuring.
Mark, if you want me to, I can come back on the EPR question, which is
yes, please.
The oldest in the list, if you like. The impact of EPR. I suppose we've got to think also about the impact of plastic tax first. It's the first part of the resource and waste strategy, which is already launched. So packaging without 30% recycled content in will carry quite a hefty additional tax of £200 per tonne. And I guess in this sector, there's a lot of weight to the packaging that's placed on the market. So that's the first part of that. But EPR will have an additional impact upon businesses. And in my old world and retail, we calculated the impact of EPR anywhere between 10 and 15 times the cost of compliance that you were currently paying. It's quite a scary number. If anyone on the call knows how much they're paying on compliance, times that by 10 or 15, and you'll soon have an idea of what it could have. The complicated part about it gets complicated because the government have decided to split business waste from domestic waste, if you like. So there might be some waste that falls into the existing PRN system, packaging recovery note system, and other materials will fall into the new EPR system. So that's something to be aware of. It may not be as bad for some materials as others, but the principle is try and make the material as easy to recycle as possible, because you'll be paying less through EPR than you would now or in the future. So there is I suppose the summary is there's going to be a big impact. Be aware of the plastic tax, and then also try and have a bit of a future eye on EPR and as that develops. I hope that answers the question in the short term.
Just one other point for me on that is I think the implication there is even if the EPR doesn't directly impact on the house builders or any of the other construction businesses, the reality is that if there is an impact somewhere in the supply chain, that will always trickle down, because it always does. Yeah. So just be mindful of that. Even if it's not a direct implication, there'll be a trickle down effect inevitably.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any responses from the panel to the presentations we've had as well? But just sort of, so we continue on that theme. About 3 great ones.
I had a question for Paul, actually, if I may be cheeky, as I've got the mic.
Hey.
I thought it's a brilliant concept. The pallet loop is a brilliant concept, and I just wondered, once it gets going, is there scope to use waste plastic to make the pallets from instead of wood? Potentially go a step further.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and we get asked it a lot. We looked at plastic from post-consumer waste, and it's generally the cost. That timber is still, whilst there's been a big price increase in a lot of commodities, timber is still the cheapest way to manufacture a pallet and maintain its ability to be repaired, which is critical with our ability. So when we collect those pallets from the end user, we bring them back. They go through a robust repair process, and it's just if one board is broken on a timber pallet, we pull that off and we replace that one board. With a plastic pallet, you generally have to then grind the whole thing down again and then remold it.
Right.
That's really it's a cost thing, and also actually a repair and repairability thing.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
I have a question for Ross, just on is that, I think that's absolutely fantastic and really living and breathing sort of circular economy, and these sorts of businesses are few and far between. You said there'd been a sort of increase of uptake. What do you think is driving that from your perspective, in terms of where's that coming from in the industry?
I think the attention that is given in general in society, the media attention. I mean, last week, it's probably not on the front pages this week, but all the papers took the chance to say that the climate crisis is real with all the fires last week. But certainly within construction industry, there's so many, the responsibility has increased. So there's so many more sustainability managers. The NHS have now got a green plan. Every trust has got a sustainability manager. The attention to it now is real. And then that then stems the suppliers and the supply chain like ourselves, where we are taking steps to be more sustainable. We're not perfect, you know, but we are taking real steps and real tangible ones. We're not advocating offsetting everything we do. We're trying to invest in pure technology to be able to say that flooring we're taking back is going to go into new flooring, and we can actually prove it by our EPD, and we can actually take you to one of our recycling centres as well. And I think that's where it's coming from in general, you know, and even with flooring contractors, so certainly the A&D community and designers, there's a big interest there. Green building labels for sure are increasing in attention. But even our flooring contractors now, the sort of the last part of the process of our sales chain, are asking us questions now and wanting the restart certificates that I mentioned to be able to showcase that they're paying attention to it as well. So I just think it's becoming, you know, whilst we say it's been a real topic for a long time, we're actually seeing it in reality a lot more now.
Ross, just a question from me is that there was a focus within your presentation where you talked about the carbon benefits, and that was very clear and it was very well illustrated. But have you also looked at the monetary benefits, the improvements that you can get there, and can you monetize it? I would have thought it should be doable. Yeah,
well, you mean at site level for our customers? Yeah, sure. We do that separately to the certificate. Very much, you know, it is a bit, along with the CO2 emissions is, you know, this is the amount that it would equate to in a skip. This is the skip saving. So similarly to Grace's example at the end, which is a perfect illustration on the case study, where it actually says you're actually going to save money by doing this. You know, that small amount of effort of taking it from floor 4 in a bag to a bag on the ground floor, rather than throwing it through a tube into a skip, is actually going to save you money. So yeah, we certainly do that as well.
Okay, interesting stuff. Good.
Sorry to draw. I won't derail this anymore. But one more question for you, Rod. So your business seems to be able to utilize basically legacy products and strip them out, treat them, reuse them. As we change sort of what we do in the next 5 to 10 years, your feedstock will change in terms of what is composed of, and is that something you're thinking about? Do you have a sort of vision for the business in 5 to 10 years, and do you is that a concern, or do you feel sort of mobile enough to deal with that?
Yeah, if I use carpet tiles as an example, the industry still very much suffers from legacy products. So we collect carpet tiles currently even from other manufacturers. We analyze the yarn. Is the yarn type recyclable? Sometimes it's not. So then we do the next most responsible thing with it. And that is where the industry is suffering, is those legacy products. On our vinyls, yeah, we've established a route to take back old vinyl and linoleum floors. But currently our HE, which is another type of vinyl, is not currently post-use recyclable. So there's still a real challenge there. So in 5 to 10 years, we want to be able to say that all the product types that we do, all the insulation waste, all the bits and pieces coming from that initial aspect can be recycled, which we're at that stage, but also the old floors as well. And carpet tiles, very much, you know, 20 years ago, there was no consideration to the raw materials being placed into there. You know, it's a composite product. You have to have the technology to strip those material pieces out. And then once they're out, you'd be able to be recyclable both. So we're at a stage now that we know that we're responsibly designing products. And our process internally is not just designing them for aesthetics, they're designed to be recycled post-use as well. And we won't launch a product now unless it is. So the challenge was there, is still there, but we want to be able to invest in the technology to be able to combat some of those legacy products, but also whilst in the meantime producing more responsible flooring that's recyclable to fit into our model, and fit to go back through our recycling centres as well.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Ross, I might have missed what did you say? You can recycle LVT or you can't?
We can, but not with adhesive on the back. So
yeah.
Our homogeneous vinyl, we can actually wash it off. We're actually, you know, we're obviously looking at all our flooring types to make sure that we can combat that. We're almost at that stage. But yeah, and that's our responsibility, because we're producing flooring that's glued to the floor, and we need to be responsible to be able to take it back and do something with it.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks for that.
But we can take the clean insulation waste off LVT back.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I was just going to reinforce the point there, I think, that was being made there about, you know, the products being designed to be recyclable is just so important. You know, we see you pick up so many things these days and it says recyclable, but there's a difference between theoretically recyclable and practically recyclable. And I think what Ross was showing us there was, you know, everything in practice, not in theory, which was just absolutely fantastic to see. I'd just like to say as well, I mean, fantastic presentations from everything. Grace, I thought your presentation was great as well, absolutely brilliant. And I think the key point for there, and it was something that I mentioned right at the beginning, is that when it comes down to changing those traditional practices on site, it's about behaviour, it's about the hearts and minds, it's about changing people's day to day. And Grace, the question that I had for you there really was, you know, what were the big wins? How did you hook in your suppliers in terms of getting them engaged with what you did? Was it as simple as sort of, you know, going to them and really, as I mentioned in mine, you know, they're the experts in their products. Was it just as simple as asking them the questions, or how hard did you have to fight to get their engagement in the process?
Like I said at first, there was a bit of a resistance to it. So instead of just talking on emails, I set up a big meeting on site, and I got all of our supply chain in, so all of our subcontractors, we got all the managers in from our subcontract supply chain, and all of our suppliers as well. And I sat them down and I put together a little presentation about just some facts and figures that we probably never thought of before. Like I've put some in the presentation as well. And one of them was, it's like just over 7 years before climate change is irreversible. And I was just speaking about how that will actually impact them, like personally and professionally, and just like relating it to them in a personal way, I think, and saying like, oh, it's not just you show up to work and you go home again and that's your job. Every single person on this planet has got to do their bit. And I think just really drilling that home and saying, yeah, we can blame it on big businesses and things like that, but we are the people who make up these big businesses at the end of the day. So it's up to us to really put the work in and get the ball rolling. And I had a few people say, well, what difference can you actually make? And I think the difference I've made is getting the attitudes changed and really getting the message out there. As I said, I'm only an apprentice, so my impact is not anything phenomenal, but I think just really getting the ball rolling and getting everyone on the same page was the key element of it.
That's an absolutely brilliant piece of work. I'm really, really great to see.
Thank you.
I would echo that, and I think the point that was made various times through the panel, etc., is it's about the practical things that can happen, and it's about getting the hearts and the minds for the people who are actually doing the building on site. You know, it's easier, let's say, to get the people who are responsible for sustainability on board and get them thinking about it. The key is to try and make it directly relevant to those people who are building the thing on site. And sometimes that's about getting them to understand the personal implications to them. Yeah. And sometimes it's about, as I said before, it's about getting them to understand the commercial implications for them, because they're probably responsible for a P&L in some format, or a contribution to a P&L in some format, the profitability of the job. So if you can avoid having a situation where you've got that tension, I want to do the right thing, but I don't think I can because it's going to cost me too much. If you can avoid that stress, if you like, then I think you're going to win out. And I thought your presentation was a perfect example of somebody who's been able to achieve that. So very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Matt, we have 8 minutes left and we've got 9 outstanding questions. And I'm
Okay.
wondering if we just put the questions up, and anybody who thinks they can knock off the question, knocks off the question. And then if we see if we've got any time left to say goodbye to everybody.
Sounds like a perfect plan to me.
Okay, so question one. Would you say, so anybody who can answer, panelists or speakers, please do. Would you say that the UK infrastructure is in place to identify, collect, process and redistribute recyclable material to feed it back in the supply chain? That sounds like one for Biffa.
Definitely, I'll take that very quickly. The short answer to that is yes, it is. But the challenge is there isn't enough end markets for the material once it's collected. And that's the important bit. That's the final bit of the equation, is finding people who want to buy that material, turn it into something. And that's the challenge that we're all facing at the moment. But in an environment like this, there's plenty of products that need waste as feedstock. And I think we can be a bit creative and push these materials into things we never thought possible in the past, I think.
Yeah, okay. And I think I would also add to that, I think that the infrastructure is improving literally month by month. So that's an important part of that. The other part of it is actually the role of organisations like the school, which make people aware of, well, there is an end market for here, and put those people in touch with each other. So yeah, I think I would agree. The infrastructure is there. It's about awareness. It's about getting people bought into it. It's about filling the gaps, if you like. Yeah.
So the next question is about recovery targets, saying there's such a low target. What quantitative reuse targets should be set by clients? And could these be linked to BREEAM, CQAL, and maybe broken into different material types, excavation, concrete, aggregates, timber and steel, packaging, pallets? Who'd like to answer that?
I'll jump in while everybody else is thinking, shall I? I agree, recovery targets, as we talked about the interpretation of recovery and what that means. It is a little bit more difficult, I think, for clients to think about reuse because it is project specific. So it's much easier to set an overall recycling and recovery target for a project when it's something generic that you can apply to everything. But obviously, when you're looking at reuse of building structures, even rather than demolition, it's obviously that sort of project by project approach that really needs to be implemented. And I think there are some clients that are really shifting the way they think about these things, but it is very difficult. There's a majority of clients that want a clean, brand new, lovely spanking building to meet their requirement. You can understand why. So it's really getting it's that education piece as we go up, as well as the supply chain. That's just a tiny part of the answer to that. I'm sure other people have got other things to say there as well.
There's so much more to say, and we've got 5 minutes and 5 questions.
One other very quick point on that is, I think whoever posed the question, I think it absolutely is important to break it down by product group, because it's far too easy to come up with a generic number which says, but that doesn't apply to us because we've got a bigger proportion of this product or that product. So very important to break it down by product group, because there's certain products where you say, well, it's 100% recoverable, and there's other products where it's materially more difficult. Yeah, so I think that's an important part of that question.
Can I just jump in? I've got a resource that I found recently, and I don't know, it may well be known to you, out of this Interreg project, which is the reuse toolkit and procurement strategies, which it talks about a bit about that, and sort of takes you through target setting and how you can potentially do that, or asking for reuse within contracts. So I'll send that link on, and I really advise people.
Helpful. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. So I should do the next one from Nathan Gray. She says, should there be more segregation at sites to move away from the use of mixed construction skips? Mixed skips should be reported as general waste unless it meets a specific criteria from the point of production, and not utilise the processing facilities' overall performance.
Yes, is the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not surprised to hear that.
Fantastic. Right. Thanks for that. Okay. Dave Jages makes a comment. He says that he expects the vast majority of tonnage of waste is soil. Are there stats on recycling rates which don't include muck away? Anybody know?
Yeah,
there are. Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the overall figures, I think for construction, demolition, excavation, if I remember a report I read recently, I think about 40 to 50% of it is excavation waste. I think that's what we're looking at. But yes, so it would be good to have that split down, more granularity on the recycling recovery rates for those different types of things. Yeah.
And is it possible to get that data? Yes, it is the answer. Yeah.
Great. Anonymous attendee asks, how can the construction industry improve tracking of material use?
That's a tricky one.
I know, that's a bit,
I'm sorry,
that's a bit of a hospital pass, that right at the end for somebody.
No, it's there's various pieces of technology that I think a few people have alluded to. I think Grace mentioned something. The brand that I know is QFlow, but I know that others are available, whereby it's a much more efficient way of, you don't allow materials on site if they don't meet the spec or they've not been ordered, and it's all done via an app. So you can track things that way and prevent waste. But I think also being able to measure the output of your own waste is a really good way of understanding sort of utilization rates. We are shortly, just a quick plug, and I'm sorry for this, we're shortly going to publish a waste protocol, which is about, it's a standard way of measuring waste on site. And what that will allow is a sort of not just comparing apples with apples when we're looking at waste across the industry, but will also allow companies to basically implement accurate real targets. And it's not about finding out who's a good performer or a bad performer. So I'll also keep you posted on that front.
And that'll be available free, won't it, Nick?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Free at the point of use. Thank you very much. Natalie Kite says she'd be interested in some examples of clauses that could be written into supplier contracts regarding sustainable practices. Now, you've got some stuff around here as well, haven't you, Nick?
Yeah, that's right. It's a few years old. Could probably do being revisited, but it's all sound, and it's based on, it's a sort of interactive PDF based on the REBA stage of work and whether you're a client or a contractor. And there's pretty much sort of clauses that you can copy and paste into your procurement documents if you want, or you can sort of play about with them and edit them. So yeah, I will also ping that through.
Thanks for that. And there was a final question at the end, which kind of leads to a big thank you for everybody, which I'll let Matt do, but it was, will we be sending the stuff out afterwards? And yes, we will. You'll get the presentations. And if all the presenters can forward us the presentations, we'll put that all into one. And there'll be a recording of this for people to go through who've been struggling with sound or had to let the dog out or anything else during the 2 hours. So Matt, I'll hand over to you to just say thanks to everybody.
Okay, so thanks to everybody. But no, from a point of view of the panel members, thank you very much. Very, very good of you. I thought some excellent contributions and some good thought-provoking comments and questions that you raised. Also then to the presenters, I have to say, really, really impressed by the presenters. Grace, what a star, well done. And Ross, Paul, thank you very much. Really perfect examples of what can be done. And as I've said a couple of times, so I'm repeating myself, apologies, on a very practical level as well, which is critically important. We've had somewhere between 70 and 80 participants on the call today. So what I think that demonstrates is the level of interest there is in this. So we'll circulate, as Mark says, all the information out, all the slides and the data, etc. And please, if you've got any other questions that you want to raise, then just drop a note into the Supply Chain School and we'll come back to you and respond. Thanks to everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.